So we're starting a new series in Storm called I'll Give You a Call Sometime. And I have to say, I shamelessly stole that title from a book that I read a couple of months ago that I really enjoyed by a chap called Greg Haslam about the call on Isaiah's life. But my story probably begins watching a film with my husband called On a Clear Day a little while ago. And it's a story about a man up in Glasgow who loses his job. He stands up to the foreman and ends up being made redundant and goes through a really difficult time, faces depression and panic, and then decides that he's going to swim the channel. He's going to train to swim the channel. Amazing story, but there's a backstory to his life. And the backstory is that he had twin boys, and when they were little and they took them to the beach one day, one of those boys drowned. And I think the film really resonated with myself and my husband because we had a very similar incident when our boys were small. Fortunately, we didn't lose our son, but it was a very close call when he was swept into the sea. We were staying on a remote Scottish island in the days where there were no mobiles and there weren't even any landlines there. So we had to deal with it ourselves, and it involved my husband choosing to go into the water to stay with the boy, and to the point where we thought we would lose both of them. And we were calling out to God, and an amazing thing happened. A wave just wedged them into the rocks and we managed to rescue them. But they've both struggled since. They've struggled with hypothermia, and they've initially struggled with swimming and being in the sea. But we recently went to watch my son, now a grown-up, swimming miles and miles out to sea, training for an expedition he's hoping to do, and just watching him disappear into the horizon and thinking all those memories coming back of that time when he was a child, and the fear, reminding ourselves of that fear, and then just thinking about courage, what the nature of courage is. And the courage is not about not being afraid, it's about doing something despite the fear. And there's something of that that's connected with this business of God giving us a call. So I think when God gives us a call, and there's a call on our lives, it isn't necessarily scary or out of our comfort zone, but it's something that will stretch us. And it's a point where we get to where we have to trust that God knows us, knows what our gifts are, what our talents are, where we fit, and says, do you know what, I'm going to give you a compass but not necessarily a map, and I'm going to ask you to step out in faith, trusting that I will be with you. And one of the other stories that really resonated with me from the Bible is actually the story of a young man called Jonathan. And his father had gone to war, but his father had got scared, and this enemy was destroying his people, was stealing their food. They were slowly starving to death, but his father was trapped and couldn't move. And his boy goes off, believes that God has called him to go, goes off with just one sword and an armor bearer, and trusts that God will take him through and see him through the situation. And that just reminds me of the words that Nelson Mandela said, obviously a man we really respect because what he went through in his life. And he said these words, he learned in prison, that courage was not the absence of fear. The brave man or woman is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. And I'm hoping that through this new season of believing that God is either giving us a call or refreshing a call that's already on our lives, many of us will step forward with courage to do those things that he believes we are well equipped to do.